I change my brain? Am I just a victim to who I am? I'm your host, Steve Sisler. Stay tuned for another episode of Behavioral Insights.
I've got a question for you. Are you anticipating the worst or the best in any given situation? Or maybe in a situation that is important to you right now? Hi, I'm your host, Steve Sisler, and you're listening to episode 11 on Behavioral Insights. We're going to be talking about self-fulfilling prophecy. Stay tuned. I got off the phone a few minutes ago with an individual who is in the realty business. They hired another individual last year to help them in this business and set it up sort of like a partnership. Anyway, it didn't go as well as planned. And in the beginning, it looked great, but as time went on, it began to fall apart for a variety of reasons. I don't want to get into all that, but now they want to do it again because they really want to get into a position to where they have some help and they're able to reap the benefits of another successful realtor. But they have the business set up, so this person just steps in and begins to generate income that the owner can share in with little effort. So that's a great little setup if it works. But it didn't work last time, but she needs it to work. She wants it to work. So our engagement was based on a potential candidate for the role and looking at her profile and looking at the profile of the owner of this business and what that profile is. And as this engagement went on, I started to realize pretty quickly that the owner was experiencing an unnecessary amount of trepidation. So why is that? What does that mean? And what could this create if she's not careful? We're going to look at it right now. I'm going to pull up her numbers. I got them in front of me. So this female is what we call a true believer. Now, there's something specific about true believers that I want to point out right away. True believing people only look for the good news in the world. And she is this way solidly. It's a very strong profile for a true believer. True believers are just very cognizant of what could go wrong. At the same time, they're very aware of the relationships that they have. So they're very relatable in the fact that they have a heightened awareness about what other people are thinking, about what they're thinking, what they're doing, what they're saying. It's like living a life as if you were on camera. You're always aware of what you're doing and how that is being perceived by the people around you. Now she's low dominant, so her anger is coming in at a 23, which causes amiability. So when you're very low on anger, then you end up more outer directed than inner directed within the behavior piece. We'll look at her HVP scores soon enough and see what's going on with that. But right now we're seeing a lot of outer directedness, which means there's a dependence on what other people think. There's a dependence upon what other people do. There's a dependence upon other people doing what you would hope they would do. And if they don't, you have difficulty making them do it. Now, this is key for anybody who is a leader and you need to enforce, let's say, I know that's a strong word, but you need to enforce rules, regulations, protocols, systems, things like this. When you don't have consistent anger, it's difficult to be an enforcer. So you pretty much cross your fingers and hope they comply, but you struggle to make them comply. You feel like a bad person if you're making them comply. And you feel like a bad person if you're imagining them doing something bad. In other words, true believers, when they're thinking of other people, they don't want to imagine those people doing bad things or wrong things because they feel bad thinking that way. Well, this puts them in a highly vulnerable position. So this female is really placing herself in a position of submission to world demands. So as she brings new people in, she's really more submitted to those people than she is over those people because she's the dog that rolls over when things get, squirrely. The other thing is she's got a high degree of patience. We're talking 70 here. And so she has the looming cricket we keep talking about here that's causing her to second guess her efforts and decisions. So this is why it's so hard for this woman to hire people. Should I or shouldn't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Like this. She's up on the high dive, rocking back and forth, but all she's thinking about is what's going to happen if she lands wrong. And so she is this way all the time. So not only is she this way naturally, she's this way orientationally, which means this doesn't change from one environment to the next. So these pieces are stuck here for her, which means she has not exercised much freedom in her emotions to where they're more elastic. I'm thinking neuroplasticity right now. So there's a give and a take, and there's a stretching that can happen. But really, she's kind of got this one-size-fits-all pattern, which means it's very difficult to her to change from the way she is in one environment to the next. And most people can do that. They go to this environment, they act this way. They go to that environment, they act that way. She's stuck acting the same way in every environment. Now, I want to switch over to her HVP scores, and she is a double unconventional. Oh boy. Okay. Now, I want to look at her empathetic levels here. So this is a problem. She's 100 on her clarity levels when it comes to how clearly she can see into other people. So she knows what people are thinking. She knows what they're feeling. She can read faces really, really well. The problem with this female is she's over attentive when it comes to her empathetic constitution when she's with other people. So when you're over attentive, that means, well, let me just put it this way. Her concept of a good person is X, let's say. So if you're a good person, you will look, speak, and act like this. That's in her mind. So concepts are the images we produce in our minds when we think of things, people, and the way we believe things ought to be in the world. They're all based on concepts. It's like you've heard of a concept car. So a car company will come up with a concept. And then you look at the model car, their concept car, and they say, this is what we believe is the car of the future, or this is what we believe is a, quote, good car. And it's based on a concept. And we do this with people, things, and ideas about people and things. All of us do this. So what she's doing is she has a concept of good person. And when she's with these people, she's looking for those attributes in people, but she's ignoring the parts that don't fit that attribute. So how can I explain that? Think of this. Let's say that when she's, okay, we're going to put it into context. So she's looking for a partner, a person to work with in her business that can generate a great income that she can participate in, and she can provide the resources, the office, the management, and all these different things for these people. So that's kind of the partnership they're trying to form. In that process of looking for a good hire, let's say, I'm gonna give you I want to give you a metaphor. So let's say she's digging in the earth for diamonds. So the diamond represents this great hire she's looking for. And her digging for those diamonds is her efforts in trying to get a good hire. And that includes hiring me to help her. So let's say she has a candidate, and she does right now. She has a candidate, and this has been the issue. We've been going back and forth, a lot more than I normally do with helping somebody hire. And this is why I've chosen this particular case to talk about on the podcast here. So she's going back and forth. So she's digging for diamonds, right? So she's digging for diamonds, and she's also expecting to find diamonds. So let's say she digs for diamonds, she's digging, and all of a sudden, the first stone or the first object she comes upon in this digging process is a piece of coal. So she goes, oh, that's weird. And she moves that aside and keeps digging because she knows, quote, there's diamonds in here somewhere. And let's say she pulls out something else. It's not coal, but it's not a diamond. She moves it aside. Where are the diamonds? She keeps digging, right? Well, she never pulls diamonds out. She just keeps pulling out different things. But because her mind is set on diamonds, she doesn't realize she's digging in a coal mine. Now, people that have inattentiveness in their empathy, the first time they pull a piece of coal out of that hole, they shut down the dig. And they're like, there's no diamonds in here. Like that. But that's not, so this is what she's done in the past, and it's kind of bitten her a little bit. So now she's what we call gun shy. So this is her profile. So this is her default position with people. What does that mean? It basically, the clearest way I can say it, she's too nice and she's naive. That's what this means. All right. All right. She's unconventional in her execution. So what that means is when it comes to what she believes needs to be done in order to reach a particular goal, like grow my business, she's unconventional. And her clarity's not super here. So being unconventional and not having super clarity causes you to come up with super creative out-of-the-box ideas for doing things that somebody else, let's say, would do more pragmatically. So what she does, so this is what she did. She came up with this real interesting way to pay this person. This is the former hire she had. And it would have worked great if the person she had hired had better character. So once that girl saw that, wow, this is more of a gravy train than work, she started sitting back and collecting. So that's poor character, right? She's not seeing the company like the person who hired her is. She's got her own interests at heart, not the interests of her, the person who hired her. And so when I look at the attentive scores in this female's execution, they're inattentive. So they're 70% negative. So This means she's not paying attention. There's certain things she's not paying attention to. And because she's a little over attentive on how things need to be, but she's also unconventional and doesn't have any clarity. So now she's going to get in trouble because of this. So how do I put this clearer for you? I mean, I'm looking at it and it's super clear to me, but I know I'm not really explaining this well. So let's go back to how an individual believes something ought to be. So the way she believes her higher ought to act is unconventional and unclear. So she's got to rely on her brain bias. And what is it? It's attentive. And what that means is she has her own way of thinking about how things ought to be, and it's going to be pretty far away from the mainstream. So for anybody to live up to that expectation is going to be a little bit difficult. So the way she views the world, the way to get what you want, and the way to follow, quote, the rules is out of the box. It's clever, all right? But the person she hires is unlikely going to be thinking the same way. So they're going to have to make these adjustments. Or the woman that's doing the hiring needs to just sort of let that go and trust that this person's going to do things the right way. It won't be the way she thinks they need to be done, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work. And this is where the problems come in. We believe things need to be a certain way, and even though another way to perform it would still work, we push back against that because it doesn't fit our brain. Okay, so we're on to the second candidate. I interviewed the candidate. She seemed fine. She's got a great profile, super connector, great people person, likes to be in control of her life, wants freedom and autonomy, it's perfect for what she does. I'll just say it this way. There were no red flags. There weren't really even any orange flags. I don't even know if they were yellow flags. I did not feel any trepidation when I looked at this profile and interviewed the person. So I circled back with the owner and said, okay, bada, bada, ba, here we go. Here's this and that. And this is what she's like, okay, great. Well, then she books another hour with me later in the week. So I saw that come in and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is all about. So I got on that call and she goes, I just want to go over the things we talked about and this and that's when I said, listen, you're over analyzing everything here. You are over analyzing. You are very gun shy because everything you had hoped for didn't transpire last time. But because you're a conflict avoider, because you're overly empathetic, because you're low dominant, because of these things, and you have this amiable personality, and you end up crossing your fingers and hoping and doubting things are going to work, you're bringing this you're basically fulfilling your fear-driven prophecy. So what your brain is going to do is your brain has a belief that most people aren't going to work out. You just have this belief as a default position. And the fact of the matter is that's likely not true. There's a lot of people that could work out. But you see, here's what you want. You want to be able to take a trip from Boston to California and not run into one car accident, one detour. You want all the lights to be green, and you want all the gas stations and hotels to be in the perfect spot before you take the trip. because you struggle to figure out what to do when you come upon an obstacle in the road. So what you want is all obstacles cleared before you start driving. That's not going to happen. What you need to do is learn to navigate difficulty. You need to learn to navigate things when they're not what you expected. And so it's important that you get better at conflict, because right now you basically suck at it. And this is the problem. When that former person started pulling back, you should have addressed it immediately and said, this isn't going to work. We need to have a conversation, rather than letting it play itself out and then feeling like a failure because it didn't work. What happened was the car started veering off the road and you just watched it go over the bridge, rather than stopping it because you're a conflict avoider. So what I want to help you do is learn how to negotiate situations, circumstances, and people when it's not going as planned. And that's what you're terrible at. And so it's not really the hire, it's your inability to control hires. It's your inability to confront a hire. It's your inability to be strong and say, here's, the way this needs to be. And one of the reasons why you're struggling to do this is because, you can't, you get low clarity in your own self-value. And so your self-esteem's not super. And so you don't see yourself as a good negotiator. You don't see yourself as a strong leader. You're not seeing these qualities in yourself, even though they could be there if you want them to be. But you're struggling to do that. So anyway, what happens when we have these beliefs? Our brain cherishes the belief. It doesn't scrutinize it. It cherishes the belief. This is known as the rider and the elephant doctrine. And so I want you to picture your emotions like an elephant. I want you to see and picture your internal emotional drivers, which is your character base, as an elephant. And I want you to picture a rider on top of that elephant. And that rider represents your logical reasoning. It's the part of your brain that you would use to solve a math equation, or to plan a vacation, or to negotiate difficulty by strategizing. That part of your brain. So what happens is, if you see your garden hose in the grass at your house, and you didn't expect it to be there, and you look down and you see it a little bit under the grass, and let's say it's black, your first thought is snake. And you know how that happens. Maybe this happened to me. Here's a really good example. I was in my pool the other day, and we have this plant called a wandering Jew. And sometimes pieces fall off. And when they start to decompose, they get a little slimy. So that was kind of laying on the bottom. It was a very small piece of a stem or a leaf or something. And I didn't really notice. I thought it was down there. What I like to do sometimes, acorns can fall in the pool or little things, and I'll just pick it up with my toes, right? I'll just step on it and kind of crunch it up, pull my leg up and grab it, and then throw it out into the woods or whatever. So I stepped on this, and it was a little slimy. And when I did, I almost had a heart attack. Like, I jumped, and oh my God, like this. It was, and I'm like, oh my God, what? That's my limbic system. Now, what's crazy is my brain has learned that slimy is bad. Slimy is dangerous. Slimy, it means it's alive. So there's concepts and constructs in our brains that have been there for millions of years to avoid death, okay? And we'll update that to 2019, and there's a piece of a wandering Jew at the bottom of the pool, and I step on it, and I jump about 4 feet in the air because my brain is telling me that's dangerous, whatever it is, so we're going to err on the side of safety. And my limbic system and my emotions kicked in before my logical reasoning kicked in. So you have to understand it's always emotions first, reasoning second in every person. Emotions first, reasoning second. Elephant first, rider second. Now, the elephant is big and the rider is small. So when we have a concept or a belief, in this case, what we're talking about right now is this woman's belief that it's very difficult to find a good employee. My past history is employees don't work out very well. This is aside from the fact that she can't confront people. This is aside from the fact that she's only looking for the good in people, but misses character flaws. Like, she's not thinking of all that because her brain's not her brain's not trying to verify as to why this is. It's only going to try to justify that it is. Okay? I want you to get that concept. You have to get that concept. So she's got this preset. It's called preset. She has a preset concept that's sort of in stone, that it doesn't always work out. So she's coming in from more of a negative perspective. Now, what the brain needs to do is not verify if that's true. The brain wants to justify the concept. That's what self-fulfilling prophecy is all about. You know, I just thought of the old Bible verse in the book of Job. That thing that I have feared the most has come upon me. Okay, so this concept's been around a very, very long time. And so what happens is when you have a belief, your brain works with your emotions to confirm it. And so what she will do if she's not careful is she will be looking for failure where it doesn't exist. And if it's not there, she's going to have to create it. Oh my God, right? Wow. So this talk about the hire ended up being a talk about her elephant. And I said, just hire the girl. If it doesn't work out, hire another one. You got to stop this nonsense. And it was a great conversation. This is what's so great. When people come to me with particular problems when it comes to human beings, we tend to talk about something else because that's what it really is. It's rarely what people think it is. It's always some other underlying culprit. And remember, it's always the little foxes that spoil the vine. So I want you to think about your own life. I want you to think about what you're doing. I want you to think about decisions you're trying to make. And what you need to think about is, what are your concepts? What are your beliefs? Okay? Don't think about what you know to be true. All right? I'm talking about your concepts and your belief patterns, okay, which are largely untrue. And we see this more and more in religion and politics, and that's where these things really play out really well. And so we have these, to be honest, crazy beliefs, and we're seeking to justify these beliefs, not verify these beliefs. Okay, so you get one side of the aisle believing wholeheartedly that our president is basically got his heart set on destroying our country. So rather than seeking verification of whether or not that's true, they're only seeking justification that it is true. And you could do this with the other side of the aisle. It doesn't matter. We're all doing the same stuff. So this woman has a belief system based upon an experience that she had. But what she's doing is, rather than checking to see if her skills at dealing with conflict and confronting issues that aren't working, all these different things that get really hairy for her that she doesn't want to do, she avoids all that and then creates a post hoc story that supports where she's at, rather than coming to terms with where she's at and making some changes. Well, I happen to force the issue, and now she's going to hire this person. And if it gets, to where she's got to negotiate it, she can call me and I can help her negotiate it. But that's what she needs to learn to do. Her hiring isn't the problem. It's her negotiating people when they're not doing what she expected or wants them to do, because she's the one calling the shots, not them. So because she's outer directed and not inner directed, the people she hires become her boss. So anyway, that's what we talked about. That's what we dealt with. And this is what self-fulfilling prophecy is all about. I appreciate you listening. I'm really glad you tuned in. And until next time, this is Behavioral Insights.